All right. Hello, everybody. You are listening to the Minding Mind podcast, where we live life with ease, connection, and permission to just be. I'm your host, Evelyn LeVasseur, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am sitting down with Michelle Massarini. We're going to talk all about the behavior weight loss connection. And I know this is a hot topic because everyone hears about weight loss and they instantly think about diet and exercise. That's it, right? Like I need to eat less and move my body more, and that's it. That's the magic formula. But
Yeah.
Michelle knows, like I know, there is way more to it, and weight is not just about food. End of story. But before we get into all that, I was already going off on a tangent. Michelle is an ambitious innovator who has always taken pride in being a leader in her field. She owns and operates a therapy practice in the Finger Lakes region of New York, my neighbor. Michelle also goes by the weight loss behavior coach, where she uses behavior science to help women overcome yo-yo dieting patterns and take back control of their behaviors around food to sustain, create long-term weight loss. I cannot wait to get into this because you are speaking to the past version of Evelyn, okay? So Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I even when I hear someone introduce me, I even already start thinking like, oh my God, yes, we're going to talk so much about, I hear the behavior and I'm jumping right in, Evelyn. I don't know if you're here for this.
Let's go.
You're here for it? Let's do it. Okay. So when we talk about behavior, behavior is the observable thing. It's the thing we can all see, like she's doing this, I want to do it. They're doing that, I want to do it. And we just try to replicate the behavior. We think if I do what they do, then monkey see, monkey do, I'm going to get the same results. And logically, I totally get how that makes sense, but I feel like I can't get this enough. And I maybe you can help me find the right words to say it, but it's it comes from the inside. And I talk about those behaviors as being, of course, behaviors. You don't have to worry about what behaviors you're going to do or not do, what habits you have to break and not break, when you know what the driving factor of your behaviors is and the driving factor of change. Like we were just talking, I know for a couple minutes before this, changing is the motivation. Your why is the thing that actually makes you want to do the thing you want to do. And it's sacrificing the little pleasures, which is food, the doom scrolling, the traditions, the things we get really excited about. But those are the things that actually are sabotaging us away from the things that we want and we value. And I'm going to be honest, I think weight loss is a value for a lot of women because it feels so powerless to attain. You go through the diet so much and you just are I'm doing what they're saying and it's not happening because you're doing and you're not thinking. And when you start thinking and feeling, then you of course do what's going to honor what you're thinking and what you're feeling.
So
is that
how do you get women to connect with the idea that the goal they have in mind, the physical goal they have in mind, which I don't like to think about a physical goal because I think you set yourself up for failure when you do that. But when women, because women will come to me and say, I just want to lose 30 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever it is. How do you get them to make the connection that that goal they have in mind is not really about the body? It is about what they want to feel when they get there. How do you get them to see that?
Yeah. Okay. So the first two things that I do, number one, is I make them connect to their why. And their why is going to be multifaceted. I want to have a better life for my family. I want to look better in a bathing suit. I'm getting married. Maybe, whatever their why is, it's going to have 3 or 4 different prongs. And we want to start building habits into their life that are going to attach to that why. So that's the first piece of it. Where's your motivation coming from? But I also recognize that motivation is a wave. Some days we have really high motivation and other days we don't have really high motivation. So motivation is not going to be the thing that actually causes that behavior change. But when we pair it with this is the thing that most people don't expect me to say, is a values assessment. I have every single woman that I work with do a values assessment because I want her to get to know her. She's the one that's going to create this plan. I can talk about healthy habits till I'm blue in the face, drink more water, get outside and walk, exercise, start strength training, whatever. But she's going to know what she needs best. And so I have to get her to heal her relationship with herself. And in order to do that, she has to get to know her first. So I think of it like a friendship. Like you're at a bar and you just met somebody and you're talking to them. What questions are you going to ask them? What do you want to know about them? What do you want to learn about them? And just knowing what you want to know about a random stranger you met at a bar is going to tell you what you value.
Yeah.
And like, so yeah, it's about learning your motivation and pairing that with like who you are as a woman, and just honoring that. Like your weight loss is going to come up, and it's going to come because you're prioritizing your health. It doesn't have to be like I want to lose 20 pounds in 6 months. Like it doesn't have to be that concrete. It's like, I want to lose this weight, and that's important to me. So if I start acting in ways that make me feel valuable, important, and empowered, then I'm going to do things that are going to make me lose weight. Like that is just natural. We can get into the science of it when it's your last 10 pounds, but when it's just like, you know,
You can help someone see though, because I'm listening to you, and obviously, coming from my background and being the person who dieted like literally for 19 years, I told myself
yeah.
I was just eating healthy, but I was depriving myself for 19 years on
Mhm.
and off, right? How do you help someone who's listening right now and says, okay, Michelle, that's all great, but I don't really give a shit about feelings. I'm talking about food. I know that I want to lose this weight and that has nothing to do with what I feel. How do you help them
Mm.
see, how do you help them see the depth of the fact that the weight is just a symptom of something else?
To be really honest, I feel like a lot of the women, I usually say, borrow my belief until you have it yourself, because we're so damaged from the trauma that this, I mean, I'm going to say trauma, and I'm going to say it as a trauma therapist, that comes from the scale, that comes from the self-talk that makes us feel so powerless and so worthless. Because the thing is like, I would challenge the woman who doesn't care what she feels about to think about the fact that her internal voice is really mean, probably. And it's probably really mean because it's protecting her from the things that she actually cares about, that she's been burned by. Like, so for example, if you value relationships and you want to have warm, nourishing, beautiful human relationships in your life, you're going to be anxious when you go to parties, because your anxiety is going to prey on your vulnerabilities. If something's important to you, our anxiety is going to tell us right then and there. And the reason why that woman may not care about her feelings is because they've been burned too much and she's trying to protect them, or she doesn't even know how to listen from the inside. And in that case, I just need them to put their trust in me if they can't put it in them. And I know that that's a big ask. That's a big, as a woman myself who is a not very trusting woman, I know that that's a big ask. But the trust comes from saying, listen, you've tried everything else, and I'm literally here and I'm validating that you've tried everything, you felt everything, you thought everything, you did all the diets, but it's not working because you haven't made changes from the inside to come outward. And
Mhm.
so really it's a trust thing. And like also being able to bring up the science of it. Like if you can't trust in your belief, let's talk about the science. When I use this term a lot. When I use the term rewiring your brain for weight loss, what I actually mean when I'm saying rewiring your brain is getting your brain to prioritize it. And the only way you can get your brain to prioritize it is by communicating with it and giving it feedback. And so we're always communicating with our brain and our body. We just don't always know what we're saying to it. I teach women how to kind of tune in and be like more intentional about their communication inward, because the body is very communicative to us.
Mhm.
And when we are rewiring our brain, we're just telling our brain, hey, this is important, and I don't want to keep acting the way that I used to act, and I want to act a new way, and there's a brand new CEO in town, and this is what she's going to do. And we just start bringing in habits and slowly building those habits. I'm obsessed with the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. That, if anyone wants to change their habits, that's a place to start. I always recommend starting with that book, because he literally teaches you. I give this joke, he literally flosses one tooth to teach you how to floss all your teeth. So you have to get really darn good at flossing that one tooth over and over and over again. He went through 15 different types of floss, all these different things, and you stay committed, because your commitment comes from yourself and your sense of values, and you're just trying to honor your values.
I love that. I love that because it feels a little bit more attainable, I guess, because okay,
Mhm.
so I think the other issue is that when a woman starts feeling like I want to change my body, she instantly pictures the end result,
Mhm.
and her mind instantly points out all the difficulty in the road in getting there, right?
Mhm.
Like, so she's focused on, oh my gosh, like 40, 50 pounds feels impossible. It's going to have
Mhm.
to be so hard. I'm going to have to restrict myself so much. This is going to take, that's where I think all the language around this is going to take extra motivation. I'm going to have to be extra
Mhm.
disciplined. I'm going to have to make sure I have all the self-control, which really is translating to I have to deprive. I'm going to go without
I'm worried I'm gonna mess up. Like, I
100.
hear that hyper planning, like, just when I talked about anxiety preys on your vulnerabilities. If you wanna have a really, really good plan, you're gonna be scared as you know what about making that plan, and because anxiety is gonna attack it, and they're not attacking it in a way to disrupt your life or, in a malicious way. It's really just like, "Hey, this is important. Hey,
Yep.
remember how you said this was really important?" And it's not a finessed communication. It's just like talking to a 2-year-old. Like, there's some things they're going to understand, but there's a lot of it they're really not,
Yeah.
and they're talking to you, and there's so much they're telling you, and you're going to understand only some of it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, like, in that dynamic. You just have to know, you just have to finesse that relationship better. You're going to get deeper. You're going to have more, a conversation you're going to have with a 2-year-old is going to be so different than a conversation you're going to have with a 22-year-old. And you just have to help them develop there. So you have to develop that relationship in the same way that, like, your children develop in front of you, and you see how your interactions with them change as they age.
So, can you walk us through what it looks like to start? Like, how does the behavior change correlate to the actual sustainable weight loss? What does that look like in real time?
Yeah, so the behavior change is honestly like somebody being able to it's so hard for me to say without starting with feel, cuz feeling is really the core of all this. Without getting into, without this turning into a professional lecture, the thing that I tell my clients is have them imagine a triangle in their head, and the triangle is the strongest shape because it disperses all the weight between all the points. And
Mm.
so on each point, we have your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors. And this triangle has to be congruent. So the silly example I give my clients is like, can't you tell I'm so happy right now, Evelyn? Right? Like, because like that would be so weird if my behaviors looked different than how I was feeling.
Mhm.
So if we want to change our behaviors, we have to stop focusing on them. Like, actually, the real translatable stuff I tell my clients is stop listening, stop reading books, stop taking in information, because I need you to start listening inwards. And so in real time, that is spend 5 minutes in the bathroom with yourself having a conversation about what you ate for dinner last night, or give yourself 3 compliments that are totally unexpected and are going to put a huge smile on your face. Like, just coming up with icebreakers and conversation starters to build a relationship. And I teach the women that I work with that, like, this is the strategy. The strategy is to build the relationship, so that once you've built the relationship, now you know how to communicate with your brain, and now you know how to communicate with your body. And if you want to change your behaviors, you get to make that executive decision, because you know how to make yourself feel so dang empowered that you can go out and make the changes that you need to make. And you'll go get an expert, a behavior change expert like myself, or somebody, BJ Fogg, or somebody else who's in the behavior change sector. And they're like, okay, now let's get into the design of habit building. Because that's really, now we're talking about the science of habits, which is now they're ready for that. Where I don't think they're ready for the science of habits until they build a relationship with
Mhm.
themselves.
So, okay, so you take someone who is essentially disconnected from what they feel, help them build
Mhm.
this relationship with themselves and honor the
Mhm.
feeling that they currently have and the feeling they want to have. And you start to implement tiny incremental habit
Mhm.
changes.
Mhm.
How then do you take them to that point of shifting the mind to change the body? What comes next?
Yeah. So in that, that's when we get into the trial and error phase of the habits. And in the trial and error phase, like, error is built into the title. You are meant to like hit error, and you are meant to have things not work. And that's where you like, that's where again, that relationship continues to deepen, because now you're problem solving with yourself. And so like when we are going through that error process, that's when we're talking about, why is this working more than something else isn't working? Now we've learned something new about yourself. Like, for example, I can't have my phone on next to my bed, because I will wake me up and it will keep it like, I'll keep wanting to go to it, like it becomes a distractor. And I wouldn't have known that had I not gone through the trial and error phase about building a healthy habit to wake up earlier in the morning. Now I had to like design this habit so that my phone is in a completely other room when the alarm goes up, so I have to physically get up and get out of bed and start. And all of that doesn't make me feel good in the moment. I need to say that out loud, because I think a lot of people think that like they should be feeling great all the time. That
Yeah.
doesn't make me feel great to do that in the morning. But what does make me feel great is at night when I go to sleep, I know that I did all the things I wanted to do that day. I
Mhm.
didn't say, dang, I wish I pushed myself to go to the gym, or dang, I wish I didn't sit on the couch and eat that whole bag of popcorn, because I didn't do those things, because I was in charge and in control of my day, because I was confident now in my ability to develop the habits. In that trial and error phase, it's learning to support yourself, and it's learning to build confidence, because competence builds confidence.
Mhm.
Just doing something makes you more confident at it. And when you feel empowered, that's truly where, like, now you have this woman who's at this phase of this journey. I think it's best for me to kind of describe what she's thinking and feeling, because that's how I like go through things, where she's thinking, okay, I can do this. I can make these changes. I did this and it caused me to do that. Wow, I'm understanding how I do things, what works for me, what doesn't work for me, I'm learning how to honor my preferences and not feel shameful about it. Like, we blame ourselves for failing diets and failing behavior change and all of that, and it wasn't. It was just that you built a garbage habit because you didn't know how to build a habit. And then when you hit failure, you hit resistance, you didn't support yourself lovingly and continue trial and error, you just gave up. So, like, in that moment, that's the most important moment of the whole journey, because that's knowing I'm here for me. I
Mhm.
can do this. I got this. And like, it sounds silly, but that's the mindset shift that really causes that behavior change. It's not, I think these things, therefore I start doing these things. It's literally like, oh my God, I love myself. Of course I would do that. Or
Mhm.
like, of course I wouldn't do that. Or if I do want to sit down and have popcorn, I'm going to do so lovingly, because I'm just in the mood for popcorn, but it's
Yeah.
not going to feel like an out of control experience for me.
I think that's another major thing, is that the stories that are in our mind while we're having certain behaviors. For example, when I used to love Oreos, or I thought I loved Oreos, but really it was something that I allowed myself to have on the weekend, uncontrollably, by the way, because
Mhm.
I restricted all week. And then Friday night came, and my husband and I would, like, this was like back when Scandal was like brand new on
Um,
Thursday
yeah.
nights, right? So we would watch like
Mhm.
Grey's Scandal and all that, but we would open up the Oreos, we would open up a bottle or two of wine, and that sleeve of Oreos would be gone. And I wouldn't even know that I ate it,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
it's not about the Oreos. It's about the fact that I sat there and I made myself not have it all week. So then when I
Right.
sat down on Friday night to eat it, I didn't have joy or pleasure. It was
Mhm.
pure shoving it in my mouth, telling myself, let me get these out of the way so that I can start over on Monday, right?
Mhm.
Make sure these are all out of the house. Meanwhile, I feel shame. I feel guilt. I am judging myself. I am having this horrible negative self-talk. And
Mhm.
really, the thing that I enjoyed turned into the thing that I resented. But I just repeated the pattern because
Yeah.
I didn't know that I could eat something like Oreos and just enjoy
Mhm.
them and move on, right? I didn't know how to do
Yeah.
it. But I also think that that comes from literally being bombarded by messaging from the diet industry. Like, the
Mhm.
industry itself is not meant to help us succeed. or we would all be healthy and it would
Mhm.
fall apart, right? There's no money to be made if we don't constantly need to go back.
Right.
So when somebody tells me this diet didn't work, or this didn't last, or I need to start over, I remind them that, of course, you're starting over. The industry cannot succeed if you succeed.
Mhm.
It can't both be true. Your success means their end.
Yeah.
When you are succeeding and you're creating lifelong habits, you don't need Weight
Right.
Watchers. You don't need Jenny Craig. You don't need to cut out all your carbs. So then how are these people succeeding? They literally make all of their money on the fact that you're going to have short-term wins, term failure. The
Yeah.
fact that they succeed because you have to keep coming back to them. So
Wow.
it's literally like, I think that one of the most important things we could do for ourselves as far as like body change is to recognize that when someone else has a lot of money to gain by our failure, that's a
Mhm.
big sign that that's not a right fit for you, right? Like
Yeah.
anything that's going to continue to make you fail and question yourself is just not the person you want guiding you.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy because, like, as I think both of us are on the same page of like, once you make that change of loving and honoring yourself and, kind of living life from that place in your heart, you're like, how dare you to the dieting industries? Because we know what it took to get here. And it wasn't that it took just hard work and putting my head down and being resilient and being perseverant. No, it came from loving me.
Mhm.
And like, to know that that's what the answer is and they sell you everything but that is the part that drives me crazy
Yeah.
because like it's so hard. It takes so much psychoeducation or education to just explain to someone that weight loss, if that's your goal, that's fine. There's no shame in that being your goal unless it's obviously destroying your ability to function and it's sabotaging your mental well-being. But like, to say I want to be able to lose some pounds for whatever, that's fine, but you have to know why you want that
Yeah.
and where that's coming from, and that's the part that we discover in that journey. Like, there has to be so much exploration. And something else that popped up for me, I don't know if you were prepared for this. How do you spend your weekend nights now? Now that the Oreos and the wine aren't there, like, how do you normally how are you doing that?
However, I do every other night. Like literally the weekend is just more extra time in my day, but
Mhm.
zero, I have zero concern about food.
Yeah.
Um, I don't like if I want to go to a restaurant, my decision for food is always going to be, what do I want? How does that make me feel? And then literally being intentional during my meal. So if
Yeah.
I want, like, I don't know, sometimes you just want, like, I don't know, a big old bowl of pasta and meatballs. Great. So I make
Mhm.
sure I always start with my salad because I know, like, for me, veggies just help me feel comfortable. I feel so much more comfortable when I have a lot of veggies in my system. That's a
Mhm.
me thing. That's not a requirement. But if
Mhm.
I'm going to eat my pasta now and I'm literally going to be intentional with my bites. And as I bite into my food, I'm asking myself, like, what are the flavors that I'm tasting? Like, let me focus on this texture. Like, ooh, let me see if I can identify some of the things that are being added or were added to this meal.
Mhm.
I like to make it an experience because I have been intentionally rewiring my mind to find joy and pleasure. So if my food brings me joy and pleasure, it can't possibly bring me guilt or shame. And that,
Ooh, what?
right? Like if it's bringing me joy and pleasure, I'm not going to feel guilty for eating it. And also, when you have that connection with joy and pleasure in your meals, you don't overdo it anymore because to feel joyful and to feel comfortable is not only mental, but it's also physical.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so cool how you, like, explain that because you have time now to use your brain to do the things you wanna do. Like, you know that joy comes from so many other places in life besides just food. Like, I am a born again foodie. I love food. I will talk about food until I'm blue in the face. Love it. And but it's so surprising because people are like, "But how? How could you love food and be a weight loss person," I guess, so to say. But the reality is my nights aren't consumed with food anymore. Like now that time that I spent, that I saved for food, this is that time. You know, that time I'm gonna eat all the Oreos, or I'm gonna go on vacation and I'm just not gonna think. Like what the restricting does is it puts us in that pendulum, and there's nowhere else for the pendulum to swing except for into overindulgence, because there's nowhere else for it to go. And if that's where your joy is living, in overindulgence, it's there because it does, you haven't given any other room for it.
Mhm.
Like if you're like, oh, I didn't know that I love crocheting, or I love knitting, or I love whatever, I wouldn't have discovered that if the only place in my life I was getting joy from was food. And
Yeah.
the Oreos were the place you were getting joy from. You and your husband made an event out of it. That was the fun.
Mhm.
Like, isn't it crazy to think now, like that the Oreos and the wine was the fun, and now you can have mental games in your head and just play a physical board games with your family, whatever you want to do, you get to actually have fun. Now there's time for the fun, because I don't think people realize this, but like the food is sabotaging like this concept of I want to feel great after every meal, comes from I want to physically feel great, not like I want to have the most fun and freedom.
Yeah.
Because if you want to have freedom in your meals, then we need to find a way to put freedom in your life.
Yeah.
And
100%. I
yeah.
think too, even the idea of just removing, for me, it was all about claiming power over myself and removing the power from the food. Because at that
Mhm.
time, when food was controlling my every thought, right? It literally was, I had labels. This is good, this is bad. This is healthy, this is unhealthy. However I phrased it, it still was like a hierarchy of what I could eat. So like now, if I want an Oreo on a Tuesday, I'm going to eat the Oreo on a Tuesday, and I'm going to
Yeah.
enjoy the damn thing, and I'm going to go about my business. But food doesn't have power anymore, because I recognize that power is only granted. I literally was the one giving all my power away, not realizing that I have all the power over how I feel, over how I live, over
Mhm.
who I spend time with, over the stories that I tell myself, over who I get to be, over who I get to become. Like every single aspect of my life, I recognize now is a result of who I tell myself I'm worthy of being.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you were given permission to have that trust back in yourself. Like when I think about dieting commercials from like, I can't help but think about early 2000s dieting commercials, because they're so great examples. Like the whole gist of all of that was like, you don't know how to lose weight, put your trust in us.
Yeah.
And we did.
Mhm.
We did. That's the
Picture
worst
I
part.
pictured the Special K cereal commercials where they had like the measuring tape and it like shrunk the K or whatever it was.
The
Um,
Wheaties, the
yeah,
Wheaties, and yes.
yes,
Oh
yes.
my
But
goodness.
that's all 100% is, I know you don't trust yourself, so trust me
Mhm.
instead. And
Yeah.
I think that's why diets and programs and challenges and detoxes, I think they all seem so, I guess, exciting to try,
Mhm.
because in your mind, you're saying, if Michelle tells me to do it, I'm going to get the result because I trust Michelle, but I don't trust me. And
Mhm.
obviously, she knows better than me. But I
Mhm.
think that also goes back to being taught from when we were little, right? Like we were taught from when we were little to ignore our bodies. I don't
Mhm.
think it was done with intention. In my
Right.
family, it was you sat down at dinner time, whether you were hungry or not, your full meal, whether you were full or not, right?
Mhm.
Those, I understand that that rule in my house was because my parents wanted me to be comfortable and safe and fed, right? They were providing safety,
Mhm.
they were providing health by feeding me. Also, the other lesson that was learned was that I can't make decisions for my body. I have to listen to my parents. They know better
Mhm.
than me, right?
Mhm.
So when it came time to trying my first diet, of course I was going to listen to the coach because
Mhm.
she knows better than me, right?
Right.
So it's easy to fall into those habits because we, from when we are very, very young, in many ways are just taught to ignore what our body's saying.
Yeah, or just even like That happens sometimes. I would get that response from doctor I can't tell you how many gynecologists specifically I've been to where they would, and I know that's a separate issue, but where they would just be like, "It does that." And I wish that there was a doctor that just had said, "I don't know," because I feel like that would have been a better answer than "It just does that," because then I thought, "Well, we must not have an answer for that."
Mm,
All right. I guess we, the medical community, we don't know. And then I'm like, wait, actually, we do know. And like, we do know, and there is science behind it. And the key to when you start learning, and then you start, because this happened to me, I don't know if this happened to you, but I went through a very cynical phase where I started learning. And then I felt like, why didn't they tell me? Why was this information kept from me? If they had only told me that these things, and I could empower myself and make the right decisions. And that was what I was like, oh, well, then I would be empowered, and that would be defeating the purpose of the diet. So, of course, that wouldn't work. But it
yeah.
always comes back to being able to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, you know how to tap into that feeling of feeling empowered. And then your behaviors are going to follow suit to being empowered and honoring the things that you value. Because if you love yourself, you're obviously going to start honoring the things that you love. And same with every other thing in your life. You love your kids, you're going to start doing things for your kids. I bet most parents don't want to start picking up little league every Saturday, but they do because they love their children. And there's a reason why. So we're always taking the why and the trust, and like, the trust, there's so much more to the trust, but the trust is like loving yourself, having compassion for yourself, and not bullying yourself through your willpower.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with those two things, like, you could move mountains.
Yeah. I feel like one of the most powerful things that I'm hearing is that women need to recognize that changing your body is not something to be ashamed about. Like you shouldn't feel shame for wanting to change your body, but you
Mhm,
also need to recognize that strategy without introspection is kind of
mm,
irrelevant, right? Like I can give you all the strategy, but if you don't take the time to figure out where you learned your habits to begin with. What stories are you telling yourself? How are you sabotaging your own results? What is it that you feel? What is it that you want to feel? Like, what is the connection between this goal that you have and the life you want to live? Like, to be able to take strategy and introspection and marry
mhm.
them is where you're going to get your results. But it feels like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and for someone who's never trusted themselves, it's a hard thing to have them buy into, you
Mhm.
know? They're like, "I do trust myself." So they're just very dismissive of it, and you're like, "Actually, let's talk about it. Let's see if you really do trust yourself." Like, if you say mean things to yourself in your head and you get caught in that, I'm gonna challenge that person to say that you got some work to do. Like,
Mhm.
maybe it's not exactly in the trust department, but the reality is like that's a barrier, and it's a barrier that only exists up here. And
Yeah.
there's only one person that's going to be able to resolve it, and that's you. And
Mhm.
you have to want it and trust that it can be helped to
Yeah.
even go ahead. I think some of us feel like we can't even be helped. Like, some of the women that I've worked with that have, I would say, 50 plus weight loss goals, they've never even considered the idea of trusting themselves.
Mhm.
Hasn't even crossed their mind.
Mhm.
And, like, just getting them to do that, that's, like, such a big jump, and that becomes the most valuable thing to them, because that's something no one will ever be able to take from them, is their trust in themselves. And they can always get knowledge. Knowledge will come when you're ready to hear it, but you have to be in a place where you're ready to hear it.
100%. I almost feel like I want to say that the woman who is focusing on so and so having this body and so
Mhm,
having these habits and I want to live like that. Like I want to say the only difference between you and her is the way you think, right?
mhm,
Like there is, yes, some strategy she has in place. Yes, behaviors that she has implemented, but also her behavior and strategy didn't just start from behavior and strategy. It started from
mhm.
a thought and a feeling
Yeah.
and a connection. And it's internal. It's always internal.
Yeah, like, we change when we're feeling our best. Like, she changed into that person because she raised her self-worth, she found her love for herself, she created compassion, she has support in her life. Like, all those things those are the things that aren't on her Instagram stories, right? Like those are the things, like we just see her trip to Starbucks, she went to Pilates, she's going to Fabletics to get some new clothes, like we're just seeing these, but underneath all of that is like this, oh, I'm doing this because I love it. This makes me feel so good. I trust that I am powerful enough to make the changes I want to make. Like I can do what I want to do when I want to do and how I want to do it. I just have to decide. And that's like this manifesting culture that's coming, that's coming out. I think in the future we'll find out that that's where it's coming from. I know there's a lot of like intuition and science and astrology, and just not my sector. I can't talk on it. I don't know enough about it, but it's that feeling of being empowered. And that feeling of being empowered will get you to seek the knowledge out. You'll do the behavior, you'll do all those things. I promise you will do all those things. You just have to do that part first.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Michelle, I love this conversation. So I'm going to ask if there's any way that people can reach you, work with you, where can they find you, and what are you offering?
Yeah. So best way to find me is on Instagram, on the socials. I think everybody's on the socials. So on Instagram, I am weightloss.behavior coach. On Facebook, I am just Michelle Massarini. I do have my business page, Michelle Massarini Coaching. I want to offer my habit guide to your audience. I know we talked a little bit about this before. I think it's based on everything that we've talked about. The habits are important and they are great and they are awesome. They do need that foundation under them. But when you have that foundation, this habit guide is, I literally go through step by step. Get a pen and paper out, write this down, do this, do that. Like I will literally, this is the only time I'm going to tell you exactly what to do, but it's coming from your brain. So I will send over my habit guide for weight loss. You could really use the habit for whatever habit you want to build. And I do have private coaching clients. That's something I would always take on. I can't say always because I'm going to get to a point where I can't take on any women, but I do have some more spots open right now. And if you go to any of my socials, I will talk your ear off about it. I don't have to talk your ear off about it now, but my program is called the Behavioral Guide to Creating Confidence and Losing Weight. And the name says it all. It gives you everything that you're looking for.
I love all of it. I'm going to link your socials and your program, even the guide, in our show notes. So it's an easy click for whoever wants to find it.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot let you go without the question of the hour.
Okay.
The question of the hour is, in the Minding Mind community, we are all about being introspective, intuitive, following your instincts, creating a life that aligns with the true essence of who you are. That is minding yours, right? Silencing all the outside. So the question is, how does minding yours impact the legacy that you will leave?
Yeah. It's funny because you asked me, you prepped me. I'm going to be honest, you prepped me. And I thought about what I was going to say. And after everything that I just said, I have a different answer. Like my legacy is connected to the trust that I have for every single human that I've had the opportunity to work with. And like, I know that even if they heard 10% of whatever I said to them, that 10% still had so much love, honesty, and intention that I had behind it for them to be better and do better and feel better and just like be the best version of themselves. Like my legacy is in all the lives that I know that I've touched. And I can say that confidently because I very strategically feel comfortable talking about trust and confidence and compassion. So that's my legacy. My legacy is like the souls that are hearing this and the women and the men. I've worked with men in the past that have been helped from learning how to trust themselves.
Amazing. Amazing. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And thank you everyone else for joining us both and tuning in to another episode of Minding Mind. If this episode resonated with you, please remember to comment, rate, and review this podcast. Your feedback continues to help me grow. And until next time, I want you to go live your life on your terms and please mind your business. We'll catch you in the next episode.